Jake Morrison stood on the balcony of his office and watched the morning sun rise over New Denver. The golden light spread across the vast wheat fields that stretched to the horizon. Farmers were already working in the fields, their machines, humming quietly as they tended to the crops that would feed 200,000 people. He loved this view. After 20 years as the colony administrator, Jake still felt amazed by what they had built here on Kepler 442b. When the first human ships arrived 50 years ago, this planet had been nothing but empty grasslands and shallow seas. Now it was home to families, schools, hospitals, and the best farmland in this part of the galaxy. His wife Maria appeared beside him with 2 cups of coffee. She smiled and handed him one. "Another beautiful day in paradise," she said. Jake nodded and put his arm around her. Their 2 children, Amy and Ben, were still sleeping inside. Amy was 12 and wanted to be a pilot like her uncle. Ben was 8 and spent most of his time collecting rocks and bugs. Normal kids living normal lives on a peaceful world. That peace had lasted for 50 years. Humans had joined the Galactic Council in 2337 and had been good citizens ever since. They shared their technology, helped solve disputes between alien species, and never started fights. The galaxy seemed to accept them as just another peaceful race among the hundreds of others. The communication device on Jake's desk started beeping. He frowned and went inside to answer it. The face of Captain Lisa Hammond appeared on the screen. She commanded the UES Defender, one of 3 patrol ships that watched over the New Denver system. "Jake, we have a problem," Lisa said. Her face looked worried. "Long-range sensors are picking up a large fleet approaching our system. We count at least 200 ships." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Pirates?" "No. These are military vessels. Big ones. The computer identifies them as Zephyrian Empire ships." Jake had heard of the Zephyrians. They were a warrior race that controlled several dozen star systems on the far side of human space. They had never bothered with human colonies before, but everyone knew they were aggressive and looked down on younger species. "What do they want?" Jake asked. "Unknown. They're not responding to our communication attempts. Admiral Sullivan is moving our defense fleet to intercept, but Jake..." Lisa paused. "We only have 8 ships, they have 200. Jake's mind raced. New Denver had no planetary defenses except for the small patrol fleet. They had never needed them. The Galactic Council kept the peace, and no one attacked member species without cause. "I'll contact the Galactic Council immediately," Jake said. "They'll sort this out." Lisa nodded, but she didn't look convinced. "I hope so. The Zephyrian fleet will be here in 6 hours." The screen went dark. Jake immediately opened a channel to the Galactic Council headquarters on Centauri Prime. After several minutes of waiting, he was connected to Ambassador Veltar, a tall, thin alien with gray skin and large black eyes. "Administrator Morrison," Veltar said in his flat, emotionless voice, "what brings you to contact the Council?" "We have a Zephyrian fleet approaching New Denver," Jake said quickly. 200 warships. They won't respond to our communications. We need Council intervention immediately." Veltar was quiet for a long moment. "The Council is aware of Zephyrian military movements in that sector. This appears to be a territorial dispute." Territorial dispute? Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "This is an established human colony with 200,000 people. We've been here for 50 years. The Zephyrian Empire claims that human expansion in this region threatens their security interests," Veltar replied. "The Council has decided to remain neutral in this matter." "Neutral?" Jake stood up so fast his chair fell over. "They're bringing 200 warships to attack a farming colony. How is that neutral?" "The Council cannot intervene in every dispute between member species," Veltar said. "You must resolve this matter directly with the Zephyrians." The connection ended. Jake stared at the blank screen in shock. The Galactic Council, which was supposed to protect member species, had just abandoned them. Maria appeared in the doorway. "What's wrong?" Jake turned to her, his face pale. "We need to start evacuation procedures right now." The next few hours passed like a nightmare. Jake activated the colony-wide emergency system and began organizing the evacuation of 200 50,000 people. But they only had transport ships for 50,000, and those ships would need multiple trips to get everyone to safety. Captain Lisa Hammond called again. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived and was taking positions around the planet. Admiral Kane, Sullivan, commanding the human defense fleet, was trying to negotiate with them. Admiral Sullivan is requesting permission to speak with their fleet commander, Lisa reported. Maybe we can still talk our way out of this. Jake watched the main screen in the emergency command center as Admiral Sullivan's ship approached the massive Zephyrian fleet. The enemy ships were huge, dark vessels that looked like they were built for war and nothing else. Sullivan's voice came over the communication system. "This is Admiral Kane Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. I request immediate communication with your fleet commander." There was no response for several minutes. Then a harsh alien voice replied, "I am War Commander Thekvar of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender this world and remove all human presence from this system within 1 hour. This is a peaceful colony under the protection of the Galactic Council," Sullivan replied. "We have committed no hostile acts against the Zephyrian Empire. Humans are a disease that spreads too quickly across the galaxy," Thekvar said. "Your species must be contained before you consume everything. You have 1 hour." "We cannot evacuate 200,000 people in 1 hour," Sullivan said. "If you have grievances with humanity, take them to the Galactic Council." "The Council has already decided not to interfere," Thekvar replied. "Your time begins now." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. The Zephyrians had already spoken to the Council. This wasn't a sudden attack or a misunderstanding. It was planned. For the next hour, Jake coordinated frantic evacuation efforts while Admiral Sullivan tried desperately to buy more time. Transport ships launched from the surface carrying as many people as they could hold. But it wasn't enough. They managed to evacuate only 30,000 people before the hour was up. At exactly 60 minutes, the Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Jake watched in horror as energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking the major cities first. New Denver's capital, where he had lived and worked for 20 years, vanished in a flash of white light. The hospital where his children were born, the school where they learned to read, the park where they played, all gone in seconds. "Maria!" Jake screamed, but she had been in the capital coordinating medical evacuations. His children had been with her. The bombardment continued for hours. The Zephyrians methodically destroyed every city, every town, every farm. They weren't trying to capture the planet. They were trying to erase every trace of human presence. Admiral Sullivan's small fleet fought back, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. One by one, the human ships were destroyed. Sullivan's own flagship was crippled, life support failing. Jake listened to Sullivan's final transmission. "This is Admiral Kane Sullivan to all human worlds. New Denver is lost. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. They mean to exterminate us all. Remember New Denver, remember what they did to us, never let them do this again." The transmission ended in static. For 3 days, the bombardment continued. Jake and the other survivors hid in underground shelters, listening to the world die above them. When the Zephyrians finally stopped firing, they deployed biological weapons that poisoned the air and water. The planet would be uninhabitable for generations. On the 4th day, Zephyrian soldiers came for the survivors. 20,000 humans were loaded onto prison ships like cargo. Jake found himself in a crowded hold with hundreds of other colonists, all of them in shock. As the prison ship lifted off, Jake looked through a small window at what had been his home. The green fields were brown and dead. The cities were smoking, ruins. The planet that had taken 50 years to build had been destroyed in less than a week. An old farmer named Pete sat beside him. Pete had lost his entire family in the first day of bombing. "What do we do now?" Pete asked quietly. Jake stared out at the dead world below. His wife was gone. His children were gone. Everything he had worked for was gone. But Admiral Sullivan's words echoed in his mind. "We remember," Jake said. "We remember everything they did to us, and we make sure it never happens again." 3 months after New Denver died, the news finally reached Earth. Captain Lisa Hammond sat in a hospital bed on Luna Station, her left arm in a cast and bandages covering burns on her face. She was one of only 50 people who had escaped the Zephyrian attack. Her ship had been badly damaged, but she managed to jump to hyperspace just as the enemy closed in. Now she faced a room full of Earth's most important leaders. President Helen Garcia sat at the head of the table, her face hard as stone. General Ryan Cooper, head of the Earth Defense Force, studied reports from the attack. Director Paul Martinez from the Strategic Defense Initiative took notes on everything. Lisa said, "Tell us again about the biological weapons," President Garcia said quietly. Lisa closed her eyes and remembered the final scans of New Denver before her ship jumped away. They sprayed something into the atmosphere after the bombing. Stopped. Our sensors showed it was designed to break down organic matter. Plants, animals, humans. Everything died within hours. The planet will be poisonous for at least 100 years. General Cooper looked up from his reports. And the Galactic Council knew this was going to happen? Yes, sir, Lisa replied. Administrator Morrison contacted them as soon as we detected the Zephyrian fleet. Ambassador Veltar told him the Council would remain neutral. They called it a territorial dispute. Territorial dispute, President Garcia repeated slowly. 200,000 men, women, and children murdered, and they call it a territorial dispute. Director Martinez leaned forward. Captain, what can you tell us about Zephyrian military capabilities? Lisa spent the next hour describing everything she had seen. The enemy ships were larger than anything in the human fleet, with better shields and more powerful weapons. Their tactics were brutal, but effective. They had come not to conquer, but to exterminate. They called us a disease, Lisa said. War Commander. Kepler said humans spread too quickly across the galaxy and needed to be contained. President Garcia stood up and walked to the window. Earth hung in space below them, blue and peaceful. How many human colonies are there now, General? 47 worlds with permanent settlements, Cooper replied. Another dozen with research stations or mining operations. And how many people total? Including Earth, about 8 billion humans. In space. President Garcia turned back to face the group. 8 billion people that the Zephyrians see as a disease to be cured. Captain Hammond, do you believe they'll attack other human worlds? Lisa nodded without hesitation. Yes, ma'am. War Commander Thekvar made it clear this was just the beginning. They want all humans out of this part of the galaxy. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, President Garcia spoke. Thank you, Captain. Get some rest. We'll need your knowledge in the days ahead. After Lisa left, the real discussion began. President Garcia looked around the table at the most powerful people in human space. Gentlemen, we have a problem. The galaxy has decided that humanity needs to be destroyed, and the Galactic Council won't lift a finger to stop it. We could try direct negotiation with the Zephyrians, suggested Foreign Minister Janet Brooks. Maybe we can find a peaceful solution. They just murdered 200,000 civilians, General Cooper said sharply. What exactly would we negotiate? How many more colonies they get to destroy? Director Martinez cleared his throat. There is another option. Project Prometheus has been ready for deployment for 10 years. We've just been waiting for the right situation to use it. President Garcia frowned. Paul, we agreed that Project Prometheus would only be used if Earth itself was threatened. Ma'am, with respect, Earth is threatened. If the Zephyrians can destroy New Denver without consequences, they'll move on to bigger targets. And if other species see that humans can be killed without punishment, how long before they decide we're a threat too? General Cooper nodded slowly. The director is right. We're not just fighting the Zephyrians anymore. We're fighting for the survival of our entire species. President Garcia sat down heavily. She had hoped this day would never come. For 50 years, humanity had tried to be good citizens of the galaxy. They shared their technology, helped settle disputes, and never started wars. But it seemed that peace was seen as weakness by the older species. Tell me about Prometheus, she said quietly. Director Martinez activated a holographic display that showed various weapon systems. We've spent the last 30 years studying every war humanity ever fought. We took our most effective weapons and scaled them up for space combat. Plasma cannons that can crack planets, self-replicating hunter drones, quantum bombs that can destabilize star systems. My God, whispered Foreign Minister Brooks. Paul, these weapons could destroy entire civilizations. Yes, ma'am, they could. That's the point. President Garcia studied the display. She saw weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers, devices that could turn a star into a supernova, technology that could sterilize entire worlds. How many people know about this? She asked. Less than 100, Martinez replied. All with the highest security clearance. The weapons are stored in hidden facilities throughout the Saul system. General Cooper leaned forward. Ma'am, we need to make a decision soon. Our intelligence reports indicate the Zephyrians are preparing to attack 5 more human colonies in the next month. President Garcia closed her eyes and thought about New Denver. She thought about Jake Morrison and all the other survivors sitting in Zephyrian prison camps. She thought about the children who would never grow up and the families that would never be reunited. There's something else, Director Martinez said quietly. Yesterday, we received a communication from the Galactic Council. They're sending an ambassador to Earth with a message. What kind of message? We don't know yet. Ambassador Veltar is arriving tomorrow. The next day, Ambassador Veltar's ship landed at the diplomatic center in Geneva. President Garcia met him in the main conference room with General Cooper and Director Martinez at her side. The alien ambassador was tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to look right through people. President Garcia, Veltar said in his flat, emotionless voice, the Galactic Council sends greetings to the people of Earth. I'm sure they do, President Garcia replied coldly. I assume you're here to explain why the Council abandoned our people at New Denver. The Council deeply regrets the loss of life at New Denver, Veltar said. However, the Zephyrian Empire has legitimate security concerns about human expansion in their region of space. General Cooper started to stand up, but President Garcia held up her hand to stop him. What exactly are you here to tell us, Ambassador? Veltar activated a holographic display showing a map of human space. The Council has reached an agreement with the Zephyrian Empire. In exchange for no further attacks on human colonies, humanity will withdraw from these 3 star systems and limit future expansion to approved areas. President Garcia stared at the map. The 3 systems Veltar had highlighted contained human colonies with over 5 million people total. You want us to abandon 3 more worlds? The alternative is continued conflict with the Zephyrians, Veltar replied. The Council cannot guarantee your protection if you refuse this generous offer. Generous? President Garcia stood up slowly. You call abandoning 5 million people generous? It is better than the complete destruction of human civilization, Veltar said calmly. The Zephyrian Empire is very powerful. Resistance would be futile. President Garcia walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of the alien ambassador. Ambassador Veltar, I want you to deliver a message to the Galactic Council for me. Of course, President Garcia. Tell them that humanity tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We tried cooperation. We followed their laws and respected their decisions, and in return you let 200,000 of our people be murdered. Veltar's expression didn't change. What is your response to the Council's offer? President Garcia smiled, but it was not a pleasant smile. Tell the Council that they're about to learn why we nearly destroyed ourselves before we reached the stars. Tell them that if they want to see what humans are really capable of, they should have stopped the Zephyrians at New Denver. I do not understand, Veltar said. You will, President Garcia replied. Never again will humanity be the victim. Never again will we trust others to protect our people. Never again will we show mercy to those who show us none. Veltar left Earth that same day. As soon as his ship was gone, President Garcia called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Every human world sent representatives. The survivors of New Denver, including Jake Morrison, testified about what they had witnessed. When the testimony was finished, President Garcia addressed the assembled leaders. The galaxy has made its choice. They see us as a disease to be cured, not as fellow beings deserving of life. They have abandoned us to face extinction alone. She paused and looked around the room. But they have made one critical mistake. They assume that because we chose peace we are weak. They assume that because we tried to be civilized we have forgotten how to be warriors. They are about to learn how wrong they are. General Cooper stood up. Ma'am, are you authorizing the deployment of Project Prometheus? I am authorizing total war, President Garcia replied. The Zephyrians wanted to see what happens when you threaten human survival. 6 months after New Denver burned, Operation Retribution began. General Ryan Cooper stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around him, holographic displays showed 17 different star systems, where human fleets were moving into position. The Vengeance itself was a monster. 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that violated every treaty the Galactic Council had ever written. Its main gun could punch through a moon. Its shields could withstand the explosion of a small star. And it was just one of 50 such ships that humanity had built in secret over the past 30 years. General, all fleets report ready, said Colonel Amy Turner from her position at the tactical station. Operation Retribution is go on your command. Cooper looked at the main display, which showed the Zephyrian home system. For 6 months, human intelligence had studied every Zephyrian military installation, every planet, every weakness. Today, the Zephyrian Empire would learn the price of genocide. Execute, Cooper said quietly. Light years away, Captain Danny Brooks guided his stealth fleet through the asteroid belt of the Zephyrian home system. His 12 ships were invisible to enemy sensors, equipped with technology that bent light around them like water. Each ship carried quantum disruption charges that could destabilize matter at the atomic level. Target acquired, reported his navigator. The gas giant Cathavar, just like the intelligence report said. Danny studied the massive planet on his screen. Cathavar was 4 times the size of Jupiter, and its gravitational field powered most of the Zephyrian home system's energy grid. It also blocked sensor coverage for half the system. Deploy the charges, Danny ordered. His ships released a dozen small devices that flew toward the gas giant. The charges buried themselves deep in the planet's core, then activated. At the quantum level, they began breaking the bonds that held matter together. The effect wasn't immediate, but it was unstoppable. Within hours, Kethvar began to collapse. The massive planet folded in on itself, creating gravitational waves that disrupted every sensor in the system. The energy released was visible from 3 star systems away. Holy hell, whispered Danny's weapons officer. We just killed a planet. No, Danny replied, thinking of New Denver. We just returned the favor. The collapse of Kethvar blinded Zephyrian sensors across their entire home system. They couldn't see the human fleets approaching until it was too late. Major Steve Baker led the second phase of the attack. His commando teams had infiltrated Zephyrian orbital stations weeks ago, disguised as maintenance workers and cargo handlers. Now they activated devices they had hidden throughout the stations. The devices weren't bombs. They were something much worse. Nanotechnology viruses that infected the station's manufacturing systems and turned them against their creators. Within minutes, the orbital factories that built Zephyrian weapons began producing something else entirely. What's happening to our stations? Demanded Station Commander Velketh as he watched his factories go insane. Assembly lines that should have been building plasma rifles were instead creating small devices that looked like silver insects. The silver insects immediately flew toward any Zephyrian they could find. When they made contact, they injected a toxin designed specifically for Zephyrian biology. The poison shut down their nervous systems within seconds. Thousands of Zephyrians died in the first hour as their own factories turned against them. The survivors tried to evacuate, but the silver insects followed them. Space stations that had housed millions of Zephyrians became floating tombs. Phase 2 complete, Steve reported over the communication system. Orbital defenses are down. That was the signal Admiral Frank Hayes had been waiting for. His main battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace directly above the Zephyrian homeworld. 100 of humanity's most advanced warships appeared in formation, their weapons already charging. The Zephyrian defense fleet rushed to meet them. 200 alien warships, the same type that had destroyed New Denver, moved to protect their homeworld. For a moment, it looked like the Battle of New Denver all over again, with the humans badly outnumbered. Then the human ships opened fire. The plasma weapons that armed human vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of simple energy beams, they fired streams of matter, heated to temperatures found in the core of stars. Zephyrian shields, which had easily stopped human weapons 6 months ago, lasted less than 3 seconds. Impossible, breathed Fleet Commander Thekfor as he watched his ships die. No weapon can generate that much energy. He was wrong. Humanity had learned to harness fusion reactions and focus them into weapons. Each human ship carried enough firepower to level a continent. A fleet of 100 such ships could destroy a civilization. The battle lasted less than an hour. Every Zephyrian warship was either destroyed or disabled. The proud fleet that had murdered New Denver was reduced to drifting wreckage and escape pods. Admiral Hayes opened a communication channel that broadcast to every receiver on the Zephyrian homeworld. "This is Admiral Frank Hayes of the Human Space Navy. You have 12 hours to evacuate your planet. Anyone remaining after that time will share the fate of New Denver." On the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld, Emperor Kovthek refused to believe what was happening. "Humans are weak," he declared to his advisors. "They cannot threaten our homeworld. Our planetary shields will protect us." He was about to learn another hard lesson about human capabilities. The human fleet deployed devices that looked like large satellites. The Zephyrians assumed they were weapons platforms, but they were something much more sophisticated. They were atmospheric processors, terraforming technology that humanity had developed to make dead worlds livable. Today, they would be used for the opposite purpose. The processors began releasing chemicals into the Zephyrian atmosphere, not explosives or poison gas, but catalysts that would change the very air the Zephyrians breathed. Within weeks, the atmosphere would become toxic to all Zephyrian life. "What are they doing?" demanded Emperor Kovthek as his scientists reported the atmospheric changes. "They are terraforming our world," replied his chief scientist, her voice filled with horror. "But not for colonization. They are making it uninhabitable for our species." The Emperor finally understood. The humans weren't trying to conquer the Zephyrian homeworld. They were going to make it as dead as New Denver. Panic spread across the planet as the reality sank in. Millions of Zephyrians rushed to spaceports trying to escape their dying world. The mighty empire that had ruled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years was collapsing in a single day. But the humans weren't finished. Other human fleets struck Zephyrian colonies throughout their empire. The attacks weren't random raids. They were part of a carefully planned campaign to eliminate every trace of Zephyrian military power. On Zeftar 2, human ships used gravity bombs that increased the planet's gravity by a factor of 10. Every structure collapsed under its own weight, and the Zephyrians couldn't even stand up, much less fight back. On Kevthol Prime, the humans released self-replicating mining drones that consumed the planet's crust, turning mountains into dust, and leaving the world uninhabitable. On dozens of other worlds, human fleets simply appeared in orbit and began systematic bombardment. Unlike the Zephyrians at New Denver, the humans gave warnings and allowed evacuations. But they left no doubt about their intentions. Every Zephyrian military base was destroyed. Every weapons factory was turned to slag. Every warship was hunted down and eliminated. The empire that had seemed so powerful 6 months ago was being erased from existence. President Helen Garcia addressed the galaxy from Earth, her words broadcast on every communication channel in known space. The Zephyrian Empire made a choice. When they destroyed New Denver, they chose to see humanity as a disease to be eliminated. Today they learn what happens when a disease fights back. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To every species watching this broadcast, remember what you see today. This is what total war looks like when humans wage it. The Zephyrian homeworld will serve as a monument to a simple truth. You can massacre human civilians, or you can have a civilization. You cannot have both. The message was clear to every intelligence in the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the peaceful species that had joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. Something new had been born from the ashes of New Denver, something that terrified even the oldest civilizations. Emperor Kovthek's final transmission came from an escape ship fleeing his dying homeworld. "We never meant to destroy your entire colony," he pleaded. "It was meant to be a warning to make you respect our territory." Admiral Hayes responded with words that would echo through galactic history. "You succeeded. We learned to respect your territory so much that we decided you don't deserve to have any." Within a week, the Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist as a military power. Their homeworld was dead, their colonies abandoned, their fleets destroyed. The survivors became refugees, scattered across the galaxy and dependent on the mercy of other species. And in the depths of space, human fleets patrolled the ruins of what had once been a mighty empire, ensuring that no Zephyrian would ever again have the power to harm innocent people. General Cooper watched the final reports from his command ship. Operation Retribution was complete. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on Centauri Prime, exactly 1 week after the Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist. Representatives from 47 different species filled the Great Chamber, their voices creating a chaos of fear and anger that echoed off the ancient walls. Council President Zarketh of the Pollux hegemony called for order, but his forearms trembled as he spoke. The tall blue-skinned alien had led the council for 20 years, but he had never faced a crisis like this. "The humans have committed genocide against an entire species," declared Ambassador Vexitara of the Rigel Confederation. Her insect-like features clicked with agitation. "They destroyed the Zephyrian homeworld and made it uninhabitable. This cannot be allowed to stand." "The Zephyrians started this war," replied Senator Muldeck of the Vegan Trade Union. The bear-like alien's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "They destroyed New Denver without provocation. The humans were defending themselves." Defending themselves? Vexitara's voice rose to a screech. "They eliminated an entire civilization in 7 days. No defense requires such brutality." Admiral Mordun of the Vegan Confederacy stood slowly. He was the most experienced military commander in the galaxy, having fought in dozens of conflicts over his long life. His scarred face and missing left eye spoke of battles that stretched back 3 centuries. "I have studied the human attack on the Zephyrian Empire," Mordun said, his voice carrying the weight of his experience. "What they accomplished should have been impossible. A single species destroyed an empire that controlled 30 star systems and commanded over 2,000 warships." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew Admiral Mordun's reputation. If he was impressed by human military capabilities, the situation was far worse than anyone had imagined. "How is that possible?" asked President Zarketh. "They used weapons that violate every treaty we have ever written," Mordun replied. "Gravity bombs that can crush entire planets. Nanotechnology that turns a species' own industry against them. Plasma weapons that generate the heat of a star. And something called quantum disruption charges that can destabilize matter itself." The representatives stirred uneasily. These were weapons of mass destruction beyond anything they had seen before. But perhaps most disturbing, Mordun continued, is their strategic thinking. The humans didn't just defeat the Zephyrians, they eliminated them so completely that the survivors will never be able to threaten anyone again. This was not the work of an angry species seeking revenge. This was calculated, methodical extermination. Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Republic raised his hand. "I visited Earth before the attacks began. President Garcia made it clear they held us responsible for abandoning New Denver. Perhaps we can negotiate with them." "Negotiate what?" demanded Vexitara. "They have already shown they prefer genocide to diplomacy." President Zarketh looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of the galaxy's leaders. "We must decide our response. Do we accept this new reality, or do we unite against the human threat?" The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted to make peace with humanity immediately. Others demanded military action to stop them before they destroyed more civilizations. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed forever. Finally, Admiral Morden spoke again. I propose we assemble a coalition fleet, not to conquer human space, but to demonstrate that the galaxy will not tolerate further aggression. If we show strength, perhaps they will be willing to negotiate. The vote was close, but the motion passed. 12 species agreed to contribute ships to a massive fleet that would travel to the Sol system and demand that humanity accept limits on their military expansion. It took 3 months to assemble the coalition fleet. Ships arrived from across the galaxy. The crystalline vessels of the Altair Collective, the bioships of the Procyon swarms, the massive dreadnoughts of the Vegan Confederacy. Over 10,000 warships gathered at the staging point, representing the largest military force in galactic history. Admiral Morden commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Victory. As he looked at the vast armada surrounding him, he felt confident that humanity would see reason when faced with such overwhelming force. The fleet departed for Earth on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Their journey would take 2 weeks through hyperspace, giving humanity time to consider their response to this show of strength. On Earth, General Ryan Cooper watched the approaching armada with grim satisfaction. Human intelligence had been tracking the coalition's movements since the first ships began gathering. Every vessel had been identified, every weapon system analyzed, every tactical capability assessed. 10,000 ships, said Colonel Amy Turner as she studied the sensor displays. That's more firepower than has ever been assembled in one place. It's impressive, Cooper agreed, but they're making the same mistake the Zephyrians made. They think numbers matter more than technology. Dr. Claire Watson joined them in the command center. As head of the Weapons Research Division, she had overseen the development of humanity's most advanced military systems. The Stellar Cascade device is ready for deployment, she reported quietly. Cooper nodded. The Stellar Cascade device was humanity's ultimate weapon, a system that could cause a star to go supernova on command. It had never been tested, but the theory was sound, and if the coalition fleet thought they could intimidate humanity with numbers, they were about to learn a harsh lesson. We should try diplomacy first, suggested Foreign Minister Janet Brooks. Maybe we can avoid another war. They had 50 years to try diplomacy, Cooper replied. When New Denver burned, they chose their side. Now they get to live with the consequences. As the coalition fleet approached the Sol system, Admiral Morden sent a message to Earth. This is Admiral Morden of the Galactic Coalition Fleet. We come seeking dialogue with the human government. We wish to establish new agreements that will ensure peace throughout the galaxy. President Garcia's response was broadcast on all frequencies. Admiral Morden, you are welcome to visit Earth for discussions. However, your fleet will not be permitted to enter the Sol system. Any attempt to cross our borders with armed vessels will be considered an act of war. Morden was surprised by the response. President Garcia, our intentions are peaceful. We have come to demonstrate the galaxy's commitment to preventing further conflicts like the one with the Zephyrians. Admiral, Garcia replied, you have brought 10,000 warships to my front door and claim peaceful intentions. Either you think I'm stupid or you think I should be grateful that you only brought 10,000 ships instead of 20,000. The communication ended. Morden stared at the blank screen, realizing that the humans were not going to be intimidated by his massive fleet. Colonel Amy Turner departed Earth in a small diplomatic vessel. Her mission was simple: deliver humanity's final warning to the coalition fleet. As her ship approached Morden's flagship, she could see the vast armada spreading across space like a metal galaxy. Admiral Morden, she said when the communication channel opened, I bring a message from President Garcia and the people of Earth. I am listening, Colonel. Turn back now and humanity will limit its response to those who directly threaten us. Attack Earth, and we will show the galaxy what total war truly means. You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal. Morden's scarred face showed no emotion. Colonel, you are facing the largest military force in galactic history. Your threats are meaningless. Amy smiled coldly. Admiral, you're about to learn why. Humans spent 30 years pretending to be weak. 1 hour. Her ship departed, leaving the Coalition fleet to consider her words. Most of the alien commanders laughed at the idea that a single species could threaten their massive armada. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Exactly 1 hour later, the Coalition fleet crossed into the Saul system. They found it was a trap. The asteroid belt erupted with weapons fire as hidden platforms revealed themselves. The gas giants opened like flowers, releasing swarms of human warships that had been hiding in their atmospheres. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn turned out to be massive weapons platforms disguised as natural satellites. But the real shock came when the humans revealed their newest technology, weapons that learned and adapted in real time, studying alien tactics and developing countermeasures within minutes. Drones that hunted in coordinated packs across multiple star systems, sharing information instantaneously, energy shields that absorbed attacks and redirected the power back at their attackers. Captain Lisa Hammond, now commanding the UES New Denver, led the counterattack. Her ship had been named for the colony that started this war, and she intended to finish it. "All ships, this is Captain Hammond," she broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember New Denver. Show them no mercy." The battle that followed lasted 18 hours and became known as the Slaughter of Saul. The Coalition fleet, despite overwhelming numerical superiority, was systematically destroyed by human forces that fought with technology and tactics the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Morden's flagship was one of the last ships to fall. As his bridge erupted in flames around him, he sent a final message to his surviving commanders. "Retreat. Retreat now. We cannot win this fight." Less than 300 ships escaped from the Saul system. 10,000 had entered. 2 years after New Denver burned, Jake Morrison stood in the center of what had once been the colony's capital city. The buildings were new, built from materials that could resist biological weapons and orbital bombardment. The streets bustled, with activity as families went about their daily lives, but overhead, human patrol ships maintained constant watch. The planet had taken 18 months to clean. Human terraforming technology had neutralized the Zephyrian poison and restored the soil. New Denver was alive again, but it was different now. Harder. Ready for war. Jake watched a group of children playing in the park where his own kids had once laughed and run. These children wore different clothes and spoke with different accents, refugees from a dozen human worlds that had been evacuated during the war. But they were alive, and that was what mattered. "Administrator Morrison," said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see Colonel Amy Turner, now General Turner, approaching with a small group of alien delegates. The aliens looked nervous, their eyes constantly darting to the human soldiers who escorted them. "General Turner," Jake said with a nod. "How are our guests settling in?" "They're learning," Turner replied. "Ambassador Krelvex of the Tau Ceti Union has some questions about the new trade agreements." Jake looked at the ambassador, a short, green-skinned alien with 4 arms and large, frightened eyes. Before the war, the Tau Ceti Union had been one of the most powerful trading organizations in the galaxy. Now they were begging for the right to sell their goods in human space. "Ambassador," Jake said politely, "what can I help you with?" "Administrator Morrison," Krelvex said in heavily accented English. "My government wishes to understand the new regulations for interstellar commerce. Some of the requirements seem extensive." Jake smiled. The requirements were extensive. Any alien ship entering human space had to submit to complete inspection. Any alien trader had to accept human observers on their vessels. Any alien government that wanted trade deals had to agree to human military bases in their systems. "Security is our top priority, Ambassador," Jake explained. "We want to make sure that what happened to New Denver never happens again." "Of course," Krelvex said quickly. "But surely established trading partners like the Tau Ceti Union can be trusted." "The Galactic Council was trusted too," Jake replied quietly. "They promised to protect member species. When the Zephyrians came, where was that protection?" The ambassador had no answer. Everyone in the galaxy knew the story now. The Council had abandoned humanity when they needed help most, and humanity had responded by destroying the most powerful military force in galactic history. "The new rules exist for everyone's protection," Jake continued. "Follow them, and you'll have access to human technology and markets. Break them, and you'll learn why the Zephyrian Empire no longer exists. After the aliens left, General Turner walked with Jake through the rebuilt city. They passed the memorial wall, where the names of the 180,000 dead were carved in black stone. Fresh flowers lay at its base, placed there by survivors and new settlers alike. "How are things going with the other species?" Jake asked. "Better than expected," Turner replied. "Most of them are cooperating with the new system. The ones that aren't..." She shrugged. "They're learning." The new system was simple. The Galactic Council was gone, replaced by the Terran Accords. Any species that wanted to participate in interstellar trade or diplomacy had to accept human oversight. Any conflict between species had to be resolved through human arbitration. Any attempt to build weapons of mass destruction required human approval. Some species had resisted at first. The Altair Collective had tried to form their own alliance, independent of human influence. They learned their mistake when human ships appeared in their home system and demonstrated a new weapon that could drain the energy from their crystalline vessels, leaving them powerless in space. The Procyon swarms had attempted to use their bioships to raid human trade routes. Their mistake was assuming that human weapons couldn't target living vessels. The bioships died screaming as human plasma beams cooked them from the inside out. One by one, every species in the galaxy learned the same lesson. Resistance was futile, cooperation was rewarded, and humanity remembered every slight. President Helen Garcia, now serving her third term, addressed the galaxy from the rebuilt council chambers on Centauri Prime. The once proud seat of galactic government had been converted into the headquarters of human administration. Alien diplomats sat in chairs designed for humans, a constant reminder of who was in charge now. "Fellow citizens of the galaxy," Garcia began, "today marks the second anniversary of the New Denver Memorial Accords. In these 2 years, we have achieved something the old council never managed: true peace." She was right. There had been no major wars, no genocides, no unprovoked attacks on civilian populations. Species that had fought each other for centuries now settled their disputes through human mediation. Pirates and raiders had been hunted to extinction by human patrol fleets. "Some of you remember the old days," Garcia continued, "when the strong preyed on the weak, when justice was determined by whoever had the biggest fleet. Those days are over. Today, every species enjoys the protection of human law." In his retirement, home on Mars, General Ryan Cooper watched the speech with mixed feelings. The galaxy was peaceful now, safer than it had ever been. But the cost had been enormous. Entire civilizations lived in fear of human retaliation. Trade routes were monitored by human warships. Scientific research required human approval. Cooper's aide, a young lieutenant named Brian Adams, brought him his daily briefing. "Sir, the weekly status report from the patrol fleets." Cooper read through the reports. 17 alien vessels had been stopped and searched in the past week. 3 had been found carrying illegal weapons and were impounded. 1 species had requested permission to expand their colonial boundaries and been granted limited rights, after agreeing to additional human oversight. "Any problems?" Cooper asked. "Nothing serious, sir. The Rigel Confederation filed a formal complaint about search procedures, but Ambassador Chen handled it." Cooper nodded. The Rigel Confederation complained about something every week, but they still followed the rules. They had learned, like everyone else, that cooperation was better than extinction. Dr. Claire Watson had also retired, but she continued her research in a private laboratory on Luna. Her focus had shifted from weapons of war to tools of peace, life extension technology that could help species recover from the wars of the past, terraforming systems that could restore damaged worlds, medical advances that benefited every species in the galaxy. She often worked late, driven by a need to balance the scales. For every weapon she had created during the war, she tried to develop something that helped rather than harmed. It was her way of dealing with the guilt of having helped create the most destructive military force in galactic history. One evening, as she worked on a new atmospheric processor that could heal poisoned worlds, her assistant asked her a question that many people wondered about. Dr. Watson, do you think we went too far? The war, I mean. The way we destroyed the Zephyrians. Claire stopped working and looked out the window at Earth, hanging blue and peaceful in the black sky. Every night I think about that question, she said quietly. And every morning I remember New Denver. I remember 200,000 innocent people who died because the galaxy decided they didn't matter. She turned back to her work. We didn't go too far. We went exactly as far as we needed to go to make sure it never happens again. The Zephyrian survivors, scattered across a dozen refugee worlds, lived with the daily reminder of their empire's mistake. They were not mistreated. Humanity had learned the lessons of their own history about the dangers of creating lasting enemies. But they were watched, monitored, and reminded that their very existence depended on human mercy. Some of them worked in human factories, building the same ships that had once destroyed their homeworld. Others served as translators or cultural advisors, helping humanity understand the species they now governed. A few had even joined human research projects, contributing their knowledge to efforts that benefited all species. On the anniversary of New Denver's destruction, humanity held memorial services on every human world. But the most important ceremony took place on New Denver itself, where Jake Morrison spoke to a crowd of survivors and new settlers. "We gather here not to celebrate revenge," he said, standing before the memorial wall, "but to remember why we can never again allow the strong to prey on the weak. The galaxy learned a hard lesson about the price of genocide. Our job is to make sure that lesson is never forgotten." Behind him, the names of the dead reflected the light of the rebuilt city. Above him, human warships patrolled the skies. Around him, families lived in peace because the galaxy now understood that attacking innocent people came with consequences too terrible to contemplate. A young girl in the crowd raised her hand. "Mr. Morrison, will there ever be another war?" Jake looked down at her and smiled sadly. "I hope not, sweetheart. But if there is, it won't be because humanity wasn't strong enough to protect its people." As the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Jake remained by the memorial wall. He touched the stone where his wife's name was carved, where his children's names would be remembered forever.